Tout Wars head-to-head, we have by a semi-weekly lineup, so you can set all your pitchers half a week for only a couple of days, twice a week. And I had an empty slot where I knew I wasn't going to get any production out of a pitcher slot. So I said, you know what? Let me put in a $1 bid for him just in case I have him for playoffs. Who the heck knows? I get Tyler Glass now for nothing. I have unlimited IL in Tout Wars. So for $1, what the heck? It's different in every league. Any thoughts on all those questions, Patrick?
Well, there was a couple of names that popped up that I actually did have to make those decisions on. I had Dinelson Lamet. I actually dropped him once when he first got hurt. I picked him back up on FAAB about a week or two before he looked like he was coming back, and then I've dropped him since because it just doesn't seem like it's working out. And as Ravane said, there's a decent chance that he comes back, if at all. He's going to be in the bullpen where he's pretty much no help to me whatsoever, so I've moved on and grabbed somebody else. And the somebody else I grabbed was Ranger Suarez, because I thought, well, at least I'll get some saves. And I got him a week beforehand, so I got him for $1, which was, I thought, a really good deal because I just thought that was how the close saver situation was going to work out. Little did I know that they'd acquire a closer through the trade market. And I don't even think he's going to be a starting pitcher in the traditional sense. I think it's likelier that he's some kind of opener, which is the worst role you can have for a pitcher because, he just gets out there, gets to face the lineup once and get hammered around by the other team's best hitters, and then somebody else comes in and gets the win. If they had said he's going to be the bulk guy after the opener, I might have been more interested. But as it was, as soon as I heard that news, Ranger Suarez was on my see you later list.
Yeah. Let's just talk about category movement. Patrick, what do you find that are the categories that can be fixed, or you can gain or lose points? What are the most volatile categories as you go through the season? Which categories on the other side are more locked in that it's harder to make any movement late?
I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to this, but I would like to make a certain point, and that is I know a lot of fantasy players who think you can't move a lot in the ratio categories at this point in the season because the denominators are so large. And I can tell you from experience, and I can tell you from having done the arithmetic, that that's not true. And there's 3 reasons that it's true, because if you do it right, you can gain by adding a positive value player. So if you pick up in trade or off the free agent pool a better batting average player or a better ERA or whip player, then you're going to gain that way. You also gain by removing the negative value player whose spot he takes. And the teams you're chasing, unlike all the other categories, the teams you're chasing can move backwards towards you if they have bad weeks or bad months. So I think that we really need to be aware of the fact that we don't need to give up on those ratio categories. And I'll give you an example that I just ginned up with a 1,000-inning league. So let's say you have 700 innings now, 300 to come, and your ERA whip looks like 425, 120. You drop Jorge Lopez, he's a 5 ERA 155 whip guy. You lose, you go down, you improve by 4 ERA points and about 2 whip points. You add back a Zach Wheeler or a Charlie Morton, you go down further. It's really easy to move 2, 4, 6 points in those, not points in the count in the standing sense, but go from a 4.25 ERA to a 4.18 or a 4.14 ERA, and in a lot of leagues, that's enough to get you some points. So don't overlook the ratio categories because you think the only place you can gain is in home runs and stolen bases and those kinds of things. And as far as those counting categories, I think you just have to look at it and say to yourself, how much do I need to do to catch up with the guy in front of me, keeping in mind that he's moving too. If you look at the guy in front of you and he's 7 home runs in front, you think, well, if I get a guy who's going to hit me 7 extra home runs, I can get that point. No, you can't. Because meanwhile, the guy in front of you is also going forward. So you actually need to improve your lot by basically as much time as there is left in the season added on to as a percentage of or prorated to the amount of the lead that the guy has in front of you. And you have to do that arithmetic. You have to sit down and figure it out. Use projected standings, use projected category standings, and look and see, do I really have a chance to make a move in this? And I have more to say about this, but I'm interested in what Ravane has to say.
Yeah, well, I think ratio categories are still extremely volatile. I have a team that has Kevin Gausman and Kyle Hendricks, and they both happen to have bad starts last week. I lost a total of almost 6 to 8 points in my. I had a lead, and I'm now in second place. It's a team I'm with Ario with, and we were in first place by like 10 points, and now all of a sudden we're in second place down by 2 points. So yes, those ratios can still move. They can move either way, and usually if you pick up the wrong two-star pitcher, they usually move in the wrong direction. That's why you have to be very careful. So you have to be very selective in who you pick up and who you stick into there to make sure that your ratios don't get blown completely if the ratio statistics standings are so close together. Because again, everything is contextual to the league and how you're doing. Basically, if you're bunched all together, there's in a certain category, you have much to gain and much to lose. As for the counting categories, it's a little hard to gain. I think it's harder to gain in the hitting categories or the counting categories. Sorry, the counting categories, because if you're so far behind, like let's say you are 15 stolen bases behind, do you think picking up 2 stolen base guys in the next 2 weeks and you get, let's say, 2-3 stolen bases a week, you're not going to catch that person? If you're not going to get those, you're not going to get those points because that other team is still getting stolen bases. It's not like those teams just stand still while you're gaining those points, and that's what everyone has to keep in mind when they're actually trying to catch in certain categories.
Yeah. Well, about the ratios, very different than the counting categories. I mean, if you're 20 runs behind a player, behind a team, if they have a bad week, they're not losing any runs, right? They're not coming back to you. Whereas in ERA, the best possible chance you have to catch somebody is not you doing good, it's them bombing. If they throw a couple of 10 earned run starts in a week, boy, it's going to be really, really close. I mean, Ruven, we're in a league that we're playing in, and we just gained about 7 points in the ERA and WHIP categories together, just from everyone bombing, and we had a couple of good starts. So those are actually very fixable. The low quantity numbers are more fixable. So wins, saves, even stolen bases are fixable. Stolen bases, you have to remember that there are more stolen bases in September than in the summer, right? If you compare July to September, because of call-ups and everything and expanded rosters, at least in the old days, it was even bigger expanded roster. You have a lot more stolen bases. So that is more of a catchable category. RBIs and runs that have, indices in the couple of hundreds, they're much harder to catch. But yeah, the ratio ones are actually one of the easier ones to catch. That's definitely true. And, the question is, Patrick, we're talking about league engagement today. This is our engagement episode. Is it too late to win a league if you're in last place? The answer, I think, is in a roto league, pretty much no. You're not going to be winning if you're in last place. If you're in the middle of the pack, you still have a shot. But if you are somewhere towards the bottom of the league, do you think there's an ethical or moral obligation for you to play as tough as you can, even if you're just technically not going to win?
Well, to address the first part of the question first, I think that if you're in last place, your chances are virtually meaningless. And the issue is, it's not how many points you have, it's how many other teams there are between you and where you want to get to. And the intellectual exercise I recommend is just think about it as in every category or even in the overall, give yourself a 50% chance of catching the guy in front of you and toss a coin. And if it comes up heads, you get to move up past that guy. But now you have to keep doing it, and you have to keep getting heads. And the laws of probability tell us you have a 50% chance of getting that first guy, you have a 25% chance of getting the second guy, and so on up the list. And by the time you get to having to make 14 of those jumps, your chances are 31 in a million, as the way I've calculated it. And that's assuming that there's 50% chance of doing that, and oftentimes there isn't a 50% chance. Your chance is actually lower. But however you calibrate the amount of chance you have to catch each guy in turn, you have to multiply them together to understand what kind of chance you have of making a big move. I would suggest that at this stage in the season, you probably have to be no lower than fifth, and you'd have to be a pretty competitive fifth in the overall points category. Otherwise, I wouldn't like my chances of succeeding. What was the second part of the question? I forgot.
Well, the second part of the question is in terms of ethics. You're out of it. You're in ninth place, and you have no way of winning. But do you have a moral or ethical obligation to try as hard as you can?
You do. I'm absolutely unequivocal about that. It's just, I'm going to use the word sportsmanship. I know it's not gender neutral, but it's the word that I'm the most familiar with. I'm older than a lot of people listening to this call, I'm sure. But when you compete in good faith in a league where you're expecting all your competitors to also compete in good faith, you're letting everybody down if you don't compete to your fullest ability from beginning to end, regardless of how you're doing. I mean, when you watch the Olympics, as the Olympics are on right now, and you see some of these competitions where there are clearly athletes in some of the running races or swimming races that have no chance. They don't have programs in their countries, or they just sent the one person in the country who even knew how to swim, or those kind of situations, and they have no chance. But they don't step off the track partway through. They don't climb out of the pool halfway through and say, I'm not going to finish. Sportsmanship, good ethical sportsmanship, demands that you try as hard as you can right down to the very last day. And by the way, I've said this before on my show, and I've said it before just talking to people. Figuring out and learning how to go from 10th place to 9th place is going to pay you dividends in one of these seasons that comes up where you're trying to figure out how to get from second to first, because you've done it. You've worked the standings, you've worked the rosters, you've worked the categories, and you know how to move up. And moving up from 10th to 9th may not be as big of a deal as second to first, but if you do get that work in now, it'll pay dividends in the future.
Let me ask you this question, Patrick, because it's a complicated issue. There are some people who play in 20 leagues. I don't. I play in 7. But some people who play in 20 leagues. And, in terms of a draw on their time, they're trying to win money. Let's say they play in the NFBC and they're trying to win money. It would be unwise if they have 5 hours to do FAAB to spend equal amount on every league. They're going to be smarter, I would think, and spend a lot more on the leagues where they have a shot to win the money, and much less on the ones they don't, even though it obviously affects the standings and the ratios for everybody else. But of course, in their mind, they're playing for money. And even if you're not playing for money, even if you're in even if you're playing for a small amount of money, you're in a home league. Maybe you're in 4 home leagues. Maybe you decide, okay, you know what? I want to concentrate on fantasy football. I'm going to divide my time that way. It's over. Maybe you're playing with the same guys and you're playing football. Is there any thought to the fact that it is a draw on your time, and if you are in that many leagues, it's just human nature, and it's just unwise to spend as much time as you can. You should spend more time on the leagues that you have a shot in, and less on the others if you're going to be economical with your time. Is that an argument?
Well, I guess it depends, and ethical and moral choices are individual in nature, as we know. But I can tell you, I've been in that situation. I play in quite a few more leagues than I play in now. And what I found out as my life changed, I married, I got children, and the pressures on your time are exactly as you described them. But I did not stay in the same number of leagues and play some of them in a half-hearted fashion and just pick and choose the ones I tried to that were in the running for money or for glory or for a trophy or whatever the case is. What I did was, I think the ethical and sportsmanlike thing is, I went in fewer leagues, so that I went in as many leagues as I thought I could legitimately handle the workloads of, given everything else that's going on in my life. Because I think you're doing the game you're playing a disservice, your fellow competitors are being done a disservice, and the sport is being done a disservice if you just say, I'm going to enter 60 leagues in the hope that I can somehow manage my way to one victory. And then, especially if you then go around and say, look at me, I won one victory, and never mention the 25 right. or 40 leagues or whatever that you finished 11th or 9th or something like that. I find it a little dishonest, and I certainly find it not very ethical insofar as the sportsmanship of it is concerned. If you can't manage 20 leagues, given the time constraints in your life, then play in 10 or play in 8 or whatever. Because as you said, there are other guys in those leagues who are trying to win money, and your inactivity is contributing to them possibly not doing that, despite the fact that they are trying really hard. but you're sitting there not doing your roster. You're sitting